We are working together to make this society better. And the work today is all about my two chosen charities, Sickle Cell Society and Anti-Knife and Gun Crime Charity, which is being delivered by Jason Robert Foundation. So these two charities is quite important to me and important to the local community in Brent. The fact that I see very large number of people today is I'm filled with joy already. Let's go out there, enjoy the Willesden community that got a lot of history. And I'm sure Alan and Irina, they have a lot to tell us.
Welcome today. Some of you might have think, well, what is there in Willesden High Road? But there's a hell of a lot actually. So we're going to cover a number of ethnicities, and we're going to talk about not only the buildings but stories here today.
So there was nothing down to the green apart from fields. There was nothing apart from fields up to Cricklewood. Now, as you can guess, that changed pretty soon. There's a railway, look. And within about 15 years, this side was built up. And by, say, the 20s, we were right in the middle of deep suburbia. And it's got its name telling you what it is. The other thing I'll point out, there are lots of lozenges, diagonal squares all around, and the clock is a diagonal square. What had happened by 1925, the lines that were to become London Transport had created the roundel, and I suppose the Metropolitan Railway said, that's nice, let's have a squaredle. Well, they probably didn't say anything at all like that.
What I'd like to do now is to turn you completely around, because we're going to look at the mosaic on the opposite side of the bridge. So, and this cat is called Louis, after Louis Wain. Now, Louis Wain was a Victorian cat artist. He lived in Brondesbury Road, just up the road from here, and this is one of his earlier pictures. So he had cats, raising a family, playing sports, doing politics, all sorts of things with funny people-like impressions. He began working for London Illustrated News, which was the equivalent of the Hello magazine of the time, and at the peak of his career he produced about 600 cat drawings a year. He ended up being in a pauper's hospital in Tooting, completely unknown, when a bookseller called Mr. Ryder found him there. He came up to this sad little man and said, "You're drawing just like Louis Wain." He looked up and said, "I am Louis Wain." And in the Middle Ages, at some point, this site of pilgrimage was on a par with Our Lady of Walsingham. So it was actually a major pilgrim route. And this was the main road leading to it from Kilburn. Of course, it all ended with Henry VIII reforming the monasteries and doing away with the cult of Our Lady of Willesden. They took the statue and burnt it on a big fire in Chelsea in 1538. So the church continued as a little local parish church, and later on there was a revival of the cult of Our Lady of Willesden. In 1972 they commissioned a modern artist to create a new sculpture in St. Mary's Church. There's another quick story that I'd like to say about St. Paul's Avenue. In the 1920s, there was a family of Mr. Chidley, an instrument maker and an inventor, and he specialized in repairing pianos. He lived here with his family in St. Paul's Avenue, but his shop was further down on High Street. This shop displayed a piano that used to belong to Mrs. Lena Ford. That's her. And she was the author of the famous song, "Keep the Home Fires Burning," which became a symbol during the First World War. The music was by Ivor Novello, who was her friend. At the end of the First World War, in March 1918, the Germans began dropping Zeppelin bombs on London. She and her son were both killed. The house was destroyed, but the piano survived miraculously. That piano was taken to St. Paul's piano shop in Willesden High Road and was displayed there as a symbol of home spirit.
I'm going to swing round to the back and I'm going to ask you to face me.
This is the old library building for Willesden Green that was built in 1894. The ratepayers apparently had a petition to have this. At the time, this is about 1983, Brent wanted to pull it down, and there were complaints about that. We won, or we got a good compromise, which was to keep this front, and of course they were able to build behind a much bigger library, and with a bookshop and a cinema and a cafe, so that was great. They wanted to put flats, and what they've done is actually rebuild it as another even bigger library. They've got flats above it, so they've managed to do an awful lot with this slightly awkward site, and we still have this lovely old building.
The music scene exploded in the 1960s with the Beatles, Rolling Stones and other famous musicians. Music suddenly was everything in London, and it was based in London. There were two traditional recording companies, EMI, which had its recording studios in Abbey Road, and Decca, with recording studios in Hampstead. But they were very conservative, they were very expensive, and they were very traditional. So there was a spree of untraditional recording studios which were privately owned. Now Barry Morgan decided to set one up in Willesden. So they actually owned 4 studios plus a bit. This is the picture from mid-70s when this building was Morgan Studios, one of the leading recording studios in London at the time. It was set up in 1967 by Barry Morgan, who was a session drummer who used to play for 10 years with Tom Jones and a group called Blue Mink. This here is a collage of some of the famous artists that recorded in Morgan Studios over the years.
So Stratford was the first one to reach out and say, would you join? And after about 40 years, all of the co-ops were a member of the London Co-op Society, which is when we reached 1963, which is the world's largest cooperative movement was the London Cooperative Society. And that included Willesden Co-op. Now we get to the spies and scandal. In 1963, the president of the London Cooperative Society was a John Stonehouse, an unremarkable politician maybe, but he faked his own death from Miami Beach and tried to abscond with his mistress, his secretary, and went to Australia, or tried to get away with it. Big scandal. And it was only 2 weeks after Lord Lucan disappeared. So there was lots of scandal in Britain. Love it. It wasn't Brexit in those days. It was disappearing important people, running off with murder in mind or whatever. But the reason I'm wearing this badge is because he was an actual spy for Czechoslovakia. And interestingly, Margaret Thatcher knew about it, but didn't report it when she was in charge, because she wanted to let it lie because good information was coming that way. I love stuff like this. So, socialism, spying and scandal. I give you Willesden Cooperative Society. Thank you.
This is the point where we take a collection for, if you'd like to pass those around please, for the Sickle Cell Society and the Jason Roberts Foundation. So please be generous and hand the envelope either to Denise, Adrian at the back there, myself, or Irina. Okay, thank you very much.